Pixar. What the hell happened to it? Once a beloved film studio that released banger after banger, Pixar has really lost its footing in recent years, and we see movie after movie failing at the box office and being forgotten about almost instantly. The magic of Pixar is no longer there, and the innovative and experimental days at the studio are long gone, replaced instead by a vapid and bland machine that churns out mediocrity by the year. How do we get here? What happened to Pixar's prestige, and what caused its downfall? Well, to answer all these questions and more, we're gonna have to go back to where this all began, at the beginning. I love Pixar. I'm a 2000s kid, and like all 2000s kids, I grew up watching Toy Story, The Incredibles, WALL-E, Up, quintessential films that rival cinematic masterpieces like Goodfellas or Memento. For me at least, watching that classic scene from Monsters Inc. where Sully closes Boo's door with the somber piano melody playing brings me to tears, not unlike scenes from Castaway or Whiplash. The cinematic art form has included animation from the very start, and animation itself has evolved decade upon decade into what we now see as CGI. It now threatens the very existence of a live-action film shot 100% practically and without special effects, and has become interwoven with most big-budget live-action films in the modern era. The very first fully computer-generated animated movie hit theaters in 1995 into what we know as Toy Story, directed by animation veteran John Lasseter. Pixar's endless dedication to stretching the possibilities of animated storytelling led to the birth of a new medium, which has now revolutionized the entire animation industry.
This film is driven by characters and story first. And even though it is the first ever computer animated film, the technique that we're using is secondary to the story that we want to tell.
People were used to hand-drawn animation, and I knew that when our imagery was lit, textured, and rendered, no one had ever seen anything like this before.
The company in its early days was unstoppable. Toy Story 2, Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, The Incredibles, Cars, Ratatouille, Up, WALL-E. I mean, these are all 10 out of 10s in the world of cinema, and truly embody what made our childhood so magical. The awe of seeing millions of hairs animated for the first time, or the difficulties that came with animated human beings in the early days of this technology. These are all obstacles that Pixar hurdled through, and the results speak for themselves. A whole generation of kids blessed with some of the most thoughtful and beautiful stories known to cinema. What do they get now? Lightyear? Luca? This garbage? I hate to sound like an old fuddy-duddy that only talks about the good old days, but seriously, what do kids even take away from these movies? I watched Onward and wrote a whole review on it when it came out, and I swear to God, I don't even remember the characters' names. I can recite to you the entire plot of Finding Nemo from start to finish. What even is there to see from Pixar these days? Lightyear? Another Toy Story spin-off that takes everything fans loved about Buzz Lightyear and strips it away? Doesn't even get his character quirks, or his voice actor, or his zippy one-liners, nothing. Just a complete waste of time that could have replaced Buzz with Luke Skywalker, or frickin' Saul Goodman. Not to mention Disney's horrendous treatment of Soul, Luca, and Turning Red, which saw them all get sent straight to Disney Plus upon the release. All of which were mediocre beyond belief, and other than Soul, had me falling asleep about halfway through. Call me old-fashioned, but when a film isn't released in theaters, it doesn't really feel like an event to me. Maybe this is why Top Gun made billions while these ones barely scratched back the budget. Among those three, Soul is probably the best, but other than a few good messages and character moments, the entire Soul part of the movie felt cliche and boring to me. And you're telling me $150 million was spent on this movie. Where did the money even go? Then there's this new one, Elemental? I swear when I first saw this I thought they were adapting Fireboy and Water Girl and gender swapping them. It's like a cool math game streaming service kind of thing. That probably would have been the alternative. Turned out to be about how much they have in common or some crap. Yeah, sounds fun, guys. I think I'm in safe grounds to say that Toy Story 4 was Pixar's last good film, and offered a nice structural end to the original tenure of the studio. Look, there was always Cars 2, The Good Dinosaur, movies that bombed, that people thought were kind of mid. But Pixar never delivered such disappointment with their films before, where the purpose no longer seemed to be about fun and childhood wonder and creating memorable stories. Listen guys, I'm not here to watch the news. This is my escapism for 2 hours. Why can't you just deliver what you've always delivered and make beautiful stories? I gotta say, researching Pixar's shift over the years, you'd see that almost none of the original people who worked there, aside from some of the big executives and thought leaders, work there anymore. It's almost all completely different people, and their vision is completely different. It's no longer about Ed Catmull and Creativity Inc. That's about making sequels no one wanted, releasing our movie in obscure places no one watches, not giving them the advertising needed to even make the budget back, and pumping out movie after movie that lacks substance or memorability. The hardest part to grasp for me is that all these flashy theme park rides are doing nothing but tarnishing the impeccable track record the studio had for decades. To see Lightyear and Onward on the same list as Finding Nemo and WALL-E almost feels insulting. That's not what Pixar is about, and it's not what it was founded on. I honestly don't think Pixar has innovated their style since the end of the 2000s. Up was the last true Pixar formula film, and after that it has been nothing but trash and sequels, where some of them enjoyable and fun? Yeah, sure, and Toy Story 3 was actually one of my favorites too. But those classic 10 films were like the golden era of Pixar. It's like SpongeBob in a way. Seasons 4 and 5 may have been decent or whatever, but fans from all over always find themselves gravitating back to, that classic golden era. And I feel the same way about Pixar's original 10 film. I also think this new era of Pixar directors has something to do with the large chunk of the issue. In the 2000s, it was largely the same pool of creatives working on every movie. You may know some of these names: Pete Docter, Andrew Stanton, John Lasseter, Brad Bird, etc., etc. It's nice to bring on a new diverse set of creative minds, but clearly it hasn't been working the way it's been promised. A lot of these debut films have not been successful or engaging stories, and often fall flat when compared to the absolute genius of those 4 directors I just mentioned. I feel like those 4 to 5 veteran directors were on for all the trials and tribulations the studio went through, which is therefore why they understand how to create quintessential Pixar formula films. And it's not a knock to call them formula films, because I'd consider the new archetype of Disney Pixar's catalog much more formulaic. What I mean by formula is that Pixar's innovative magic that was evident in those classic 10 films is no longer the case with these new creative heads. It's why even now, anytime there's any sort of buzz around a new Pixar flick, it usually involves one of the classic directors like Lee Unkrich or Pete Docter. Pixar's masterpiece archetype of anthropomorphic things being alive and invoking emotion in a way no human ever could has been replaced by the newer guys with a vapid shell of colorful imagery pumped with endless dollars while nothing is gained from watching it. I actually felt like I gained valuable insight watching WALL-E or Monsters Inc. Those films inspired me to get into film and love movies. These new ones wouldn't inspire so much as a hair of inspiration in the newer generation. And I can tell you this firsthand. All my younger cousins tell me how much they love Spider-Verse, and not one of them talks about Pixar anymore. If they do, they'll probably mention it in the context of Toy Story or The Incredibles or something. So even anecdotally, these movies are failing with the very people they should be appealing to the most. Honestly, I don't expect every movie to be a masterpiece, because expecting perfection is foolish. And frankly, there's always been films like A Bug's Life which never really appealed to me. But for God's sake, go back to that innovative time period. When modern Pixar is stuck doing the same bland stories about finding your heart and working together, with the same bland presentation and overinflated budgets, don't be surprised when the new innovators come to town and take everything. Don't be surprised when the Lego Movie, Spider-Verse, Claus, Super Mario, and Puss in Boots take your spot. How the hell does Turning Red have double the production budget of Spider-Verse? I mean, these movies aren't even in the same caliber of quality. Spider-Verse revolutionized animated films and completely shifted the focus from 3D CGI to a blend of 2D and 3D with bouncy animation and jumpy frame rates. What in the hell does Turning Red contribute to the table of animation? What does Lightyear contribute? What does Elemental contribute? Seriously. Listen guys, it's time for a creative renaissance. I like to think Pixar's early days of uncertainty and illegitimacy in the animation space cultivated a hunger for greatness that inspired ambitiousness and risk among the creatives. When Brad Bird made The Incredibles, the Pixar crew knew how difficult it was to animate human characters with the technology at the time. They did it anyway, and the result speaks for itself. Hunger cultivates greatness, and because Pixar's been at number 1 for so long, they've lost that hunger for something greater. Winning Oscar after Oscar gets boring after a while, and ultimately leads to complacency and fatigue. I'm not saying Pixar is no longer financially or critically successful in a general sense, but that prestige that was once held to its name is unfortunately no longer there. Look at 2023 alone. Elemental, Super Mario Movie, and Spider-Verse 2. Would you even hold Elemental as a contender? I mean, honestly, what does it even offer to the conversation? The Mario Movie and Spider-Verse both had budgets of $100 million. Literally half of Elementals, and yet I see about 50 times more engagement and discussion surrounding those 2 awesome movies compared to Shark Boy and Lava Girl, the animated movie. Oh wait, wrong one. Fire Boy and Water Girl, except flipped, because Ember's a cool pun. Like I said, Pixar, it's time for a creative renaissance, and I personally can't wait for it. I know a 15th Toy Story is really being begged for right now, but just remember, a wise man once said, mistakes aren't a necessary evil. They aren't evil at all. They are an inevitable consequence of doing something new. So try something new.